What if the pain you carry isn't a flaw, but a doorway? What if the part of you that hurts the most is not asking to be fixed, but simply to be loved? In this story, we will not run from suffering. We will listen to it, gently, with compassion, and discover that healing begins not by escaping pain, but by holding the one who suffers, as a mother holds her child. Welcome to Trandy Wisdom, where every story is a path back home. 1. Suffering is not your identity. It is a bell of awakening. There is a gentle rain falling in the early morning. It touches the leaves without asking for permission, and yet the leaves receive it with grace. We are very much like those leaves, aren't we? Sometimes sorrow arrives in us, like rain, quiet, persistent, unnoticed by the world. It settles in the corners of our breath, beneath the ribs, in the places we do not name. Many of us have grown up believing that suffering defines us, that the pain we carry is a mirror of our worth. We wear our heartbreaks like old robes, too familiar to discard, too heavy to carry well. We become identified with our wounds. We say, I am broken. I am not enough. I am the abandoned one. I am the failure. And this belief becomes the lens through which we see the world. And worse, it becomes the lens through which we see ourselves. But the truth is this: your suffering isn't who you are. It is something that has passed through you. Like a storm, it has shaped your landscape. Yes, but it has not become your ground. If you are the sky, then suffering is just a passing cloud. If you are the sea, then sorrow is only a wave. It rises, it falls, but the ocean remains. The Buddha taught the first noble truth: there is suffering. But he did not say, you are suffering. He said, dukkha exists. The pain exists, but it is not a definition. It is a reality we must see, acknowledge, and understand, not something we must become. To mistake your suffering as your identity is to confuse the traveler with the road, the actor with the role. You are more than what has hurt you. When we recognize this truth, a bell of awakening rings in us. It is not a loud sound. It is the quiet bell that says, I am still here, even with this sadness, even with this fear, even with this loss. I am still here, breathing, aware, alive. One day, while walking slowly on the path through the forest in Plum Village, I noticed a small stone among the roots of an old pine tree. It had cracked. Perhaps it was from the cold of winter, or the long pressure of being stepped upon. But inside the crack, a tiny green shoot had emerged, fragile, resilient, free. And in that moment, I realized again that the suffering we carry can be the very place where new life begins. We do not need to escape our suffering. We need only to stop running from it. When you sit with it in mindfulness, when you breathe with it, walk with it, smile to it, it changes. The energy of attention is the balm for the wound. And when you learn to stay with yourself, not as a judge, but as a witness, something beautiful happens. The hurt begins to soften. It begins to speak, and its voice says, thank you for not abandoning me. To embrace your suffering with mindfulness is to recognize that even your pain is longing to be seen, not punished. It has waited a long time for your company. It has waited longer still for your compassion. Each time we turn toward our suffering with a calm breath, we are telling it, you are not dangerous. You are not shameful. You are simply a part of this human life, and I will walk beside you. This is the great revolution of Buddhism, not to eliminate suffering, but to transform our relationship to it. You do not fight the darkness. You light a candle. You do not argue with your sorrow. You hold it in the cradle of your presence and allow it to rest. Sometimes people ask, why do I suffer so much? And I respond, because you are deeply alive. A stone does not grieve. A tree does not feel rejection, but you, with your tender heart and wide mind, you feel the full range of being human. That is not weakness. That is beauty. The deeper you suffer, the deeper you love. The wound is not your enemy. It is the place where the light enters. Do not believe the story that says you are only your pain, that you are too much, or not enough, that because you have fallen, you are now unworthy of peace. These are illusions born of fear. They dissolve the moment you return to the present moment. Breathe in gently and say, "This, too, belongs." Because the truth is, there is nothing in you that is too broken to be loved. There is nothing in you that is beyond the reach of your own compassion. Let us return to the breath. Breathing in, I am aware of the sorrow within me. Breathing out, I hold it as I would hold a crying child. The child does not need to be told to stop. The child needs arms to rest in. This is how we practice, not to control, not to suppress, but to be with, fully, humbly, kindly. We all have stories. Some are filled with joy. Some are soaked in regret. But your story is not finished. You are still writing it. And if you take the hand of your suffering, instead of rejecting it, that story becomes one of redemption, of return, of remembering that even in the deepest night, there is a lantern within you. I once met a young man who had been through many years of despair. He said to me, "I feel like a broken bell, cracked, useless." I smiled and said, "That is the kind of bell that rings the most beautiful truth, because through the cracks, we hear the sound of life as it truly is." Your pain is not the end of your path. It is the invitation to begin walking it with awareness. So, dear one, you do not be afraid of your suffering. It is not your prison. It is your teacher. It is not who you are. It is the place where your compassion is born. If you can hold it, even for one breath, with tenderness, you are already free. There is a bell that rings inside you, not made of metal, but of mindfulness. Each time you pause, each time you breathe deeply, and look into your own eyes without judgment, that bell rings. And what it says is this: you are not your pain. You are the one who is learning how to love in the middle of it. Let us walk slowly now. Let us breathe softly. Let us greet the one who hurts in us with a bow, not because they are weak, but because they have survived. Let us say to them, "You are welcome here. I will not leave you behind," because true healing begins not when pain disappears, but when love begins to stay. 2. Suffering is a path, not a punishment. There are moments when pain arrives without a name. It slips into our lives like the fog before dawn, quiet, almost unnoticed. Yet it changes the color of everything it touches. We often respond to this pain not with curiosity, but with fear. We run from it, cover it, numb it, reject it, and in doing so, we reinforce a story we've been told many times, that suffering is a sign of weakness, a form of punishment, a burden to be erased. But this is not the truth, not in the light of mindfulness, not in the teaching of the Buddha. Suffering is not punishment. It is a path, a soft but steady way that leads us home. When the Buddha spoke of dukkha, the Pali word for suffering, he was not pointing to suffering as an enemy. He was showing us the nature of life, that there is dissatisfaction, there is pain, there is impermanence, but within this very acknowledgement lies the invitation to see clearly, to understand deeply, and to awaken gently. Suffering, then, becomes not something to avoid, but something to understand. A teacher who, if listened to with presence, will reveal where we have clung too tightly, where we have forgotten how to breathe, where we have drifted from ourselves. To suffer is to be human, but to suffer mindfully is to become free. You may remember a time when you were young, and the world seemed too vast to hold. Perhaps you cried yourself to sleep, or stood by a window waiting for someone who never came. In those moments, suffering seemed so absolute, so total, and maybe you thought it meant something about who you were. Unworthy, forgotten, broken. But in the practice of mindfulness, we learn to return to those moments, not to relive them with pain, but to embrace them with love. We hold the child we once were in the arms of the adult we have become. And as we breathe with them, as we listen without judgment, we discover that the wound was never punishment. It was a call for attention, for tenderness, for remembering. The lotus flower does not bloom on marble. It needs the mud. This is the great metaphor that Zen and mindfulness teachings offer us. Without the mud, there is no lotus. The mud is thick, messy, often unpleasant. It clings to our feet and stains our clothes, but it is rich in nutrients. It contains all the elements necessary for the lotus to rise. In the same way, your suffering, your anxiety, your grief, your shame is not something separate from your awakening. It is the very condition for your awakening. It is the field where understanding will take root, where compassion will grow. Sometimes we ask, why must I suffer to be free? But the truth is, suffering is not a requirement. It is a reality. The real teaching is not that suffering is necessary, but that it is inevitable, and that when it comes, we have a choice. We can close ourselves, tighten around it, resist, or we can open, breathe, and walk gently with it, allowing it to show us what we have not yet seen. I once sat with a woman who had recently lost her partner. Her eyes were tired from crying, her hands trembling from holding too much alone. She said, "I don't want to feel this anymore. I want it to be over." And I said, "Can you let your sorrow speak, just for one breath? Can you listen, without trying to change it?" She nodded, and we breathed together, one breath, then another. And in that silence, her shoulders softened, not because the pain had vanished, but because she had stopped fighting it. She had stepped onto the path of suffering with mindfulness, and that first step was peace. When we treat suffering as punishment, we isolate ourselves from life. We believe we have failed. We compare. We blame. We harden. But when we treat suffering as a path, we reconnect. We allow ourselves to feel. We allow others to feel. And this softening becomes the foundation for community, for compassion, for healing. The Buddha never promised a life without pain. He promised to tell that through understanding the nature of suffering, we could be liberated from its tyranny. The Eightfold Path: right view, right intention, right speech, right action, right livelihood, right effort, right mindfulness, right concentration, is not a punishment for being human. It is the gentle path to freedom through being fully human. We do not take this path to escape suffering. We take this path to walk through it, with eyes open and heart steady. Imagine walking through a forest after a storm. The branches are broken. The path is muddy, but everything smells fresh. The air is clear. The sunlight filters through in golden strands. This is what happens when we walk through our inner storms mindfully. Yes, we see the damage, but we also see the renewal. We feel the air again. We learn to trust the ground beneath our feet. In this way, suffering is not an obstacle to joy. It is the door we walk through to rediscover joy. True joy is not the absence of pain, but the presence of love and understanding, even in the midst of it. There is a story in the sutras of a woman named Kisagotami who lost her only child. In despair, she carried the lifeless body to the Buddha and begged him to bring her child back. He said, "Go and bring me a mustard seed from a house that has not known sorrow." She searched all day, But every home she visited had known loss, death, pain, and slowly she understood. Suffering is not her alone. It is the shared nature of all beings. Through that recognition, she began to heal. Her suffering, once a prison, had become a doorway to wisdom. This is the heart of the teaching. Suffering connects us. It reminds us that we belong to each other, that in every tear is the reflection of another's tear, that in every fear is the echo of another's fear, and that through this knowing, we do not need to be alone. Let us return now to the breath. In breath, I see the suffering in me. Out breath, I hold it gently, like a cup of tea. In breath, this pain is not punishment. Out breath, it is a path I can walk in peace. When you wake up in the middle of the night and your heart feels heavy, do not push it away. Do not say, "Something is wrong with me." Instead, say, "Ah, this is the path." Place a hand over your heart. Breathe. Stay. Walk with it, not against it. You are not here to be perfect. You are here to be present. And presence includes joy and sorrow, laughter and tears. To suffer mindfully is not to glamorize pain, but to humanize it, to recognize that it is part of the whole, part of the journey, part of the wisdom that you are here to remember. A student once asked me, "How do I know if I'm healing?" I smiled and replied, "When you can sit with your pain without needing it to end, when you can love the one in you who suffers, not because they are healed, but because they are worthy." Suffering is not a punishment. It is a part of life that calls for your attention, your tenderness, your truth. When met with mindfulness, it becomes a guide, a friend, a path that leads not away from life, but deeper into it. So walk gently. Dear one, the ground beneath you is sacred. No matter how muddy it seems, each step is a chance to come home to yourself. Each breath is a moment to begin again. And every moment you choose to stay soft, aware, and open, you are walking the path not of avoidance, but of awakening. And this, too, is love. 3. Loving the one who hurts, holding yourself like a mother holds her child. There is a tenderness already inside you, a softness you were born with. Before the world asked you to be strong, before you learned to hide your tears behind a smile, this tenderness has not gone anywhere. It is waiting. It has been waiting for the day you return to yourself with the love you have long given to others. When we suffer, we often seek escape. We look for distractions, solutions, or silence. But the hurt within us does not want to be fixed. It wants to be held. It does not ask for answers. It asks for presence, like a child crying in the night. Your pain does not need you to be wise or enlightened. It needs you to sit beside it, breathing gently, whispering, "I'm here." We have all known this hurting one, the part of us that feels unworthy, unseen, unloved. Perhaps it came into being in childhood, when a parent's love was conditional. Perhaps it formed in adolescence, when the world demanded we fit in, but we didn't. Perhaps it arose in adulthood, when we were betrayed, abandoned, misunderstood. Wherever and whenever it emerged, it remains with us, silently asking, "Will you finally see me now?" To love the one who hurts in you is a radical act. It means not turning away. It means not blaming, not suppressing, not trying to become someone else. It means becoming the loving presence you once longed for. It means being the mother to yourself that no one else could be. In the teaching of the Buddha, there is no separation between you and your emotions. Your anger is not your enemy. Your fear is not an invader. Your sorrow is not a mistake. These are all guests in the house of your being, and as a good host, your task is not to reject them, but to welcome them with understanding. The practice of self-compassion begins with recognition. When sadness arises, we do not say, "Why am I sad again?" We say, "Hello, my old friend, I see you." When anxiety returns, we do not say, "Something is wrong with me." We say, "Dear one, you are frightened. I will not leave you alone." Just as a mother does not ask her crying baby to explain its tears, you do not need to analyze your pain before offering it kindness. You only need to be there, breathing, listening, softening. This is how the heart learns to heal, not through judgment, but through presence. There is a verse in the Buddhist tradition. Breathing in, I see the wounded child in me. Breathing out, I hold them in my arms. This is not poetry. It is practice. When we breathe with our suffering, when we name it without shame, we are no longer its prisoner. We become its companion. And that companionship is what transforms. Many of us have been taught to abandon ourselves in moments of pain, to keep going, to be productive, to stay busy. But the heart does not heal through efficiency. It heals through love, a quiet, patient love that asks nothing in return. I remember a story from the monastery. A young monk once came to me and said, "Master, I am trying so hard to be mindful, but I feel sadness all the time. I cannot stop it." I smiled and asked him, "When the sadness comes, what do you do?" He replied, "I breathe and try to make it go away." I nodded and said gently, "What if instead of trying to push it away, you simply invited it to sit with you for tea?" He looked surprised. I continued, "If your little brother came to you in tears, would you tell him to go away? Or would you take his hand and sit quietly beside him until he felt safe again?" He lowered his head and whispered, "I would sit with him." Then I said, "Sit with your sadness. Let it know it is safe now." Loving the one who hurts is not about getting rid of the hurt. It is about no longer abandoning yourself in the face of it. When you choose to stay, to breathe, to listen, something inside begins to trust again. And in that trust, a healing unfolds, not quickly, not dramatically, but quietly and truly. Sometimes the one who hurts in us shows up in ways we don't expect, through anger, through shame, through harsh inner dialogue. We must learn to see beyond these expressions to the soft root beneath. The angry voice is often the scared voice. The critical thought is often the unheard plea. When we slow down and listen, we can touch the trembling heart beneath the armor. And when we place a hand on that heart, we say, "You are safe now. I am here. I will not leave you." This is Maitri, loving kindness in its truest form. It is not romantic. It is not sentimental. It is the steady, grounding energy that says, "You belong." It is the force that allows the flower to bloom after a long winter. It is the warmth that melts the ice around the soul. When you offer Maitri to yourself, you become your own refuge. And the beautiful truth is this: the more you love the one who hurts in you, the more naturally you love others. Compassion is not a performance. It is a presence. When you have learned to sit with your own sorrow, you become able to sit with the sorrow of others without fear. You do not need to fix them. You only need to be with them. And in that witness, healing happens. In the sutras, the Buddha spoke of Avalokiteshvara, the bodhisattva who hears the cries of the world. But Avalokiteshvara is not just an external figure. She is also within us. She is the capacity in each of us to listen deeply, to hear the cries of the wounded child inside, and say, "I hear you. I see you. I love you." You may think you are too broken to heal, but I say to you, even the shattered bowl can hold water. Even the cracked bell can sing. Your pain does not make you unworthy. It makes you human. And to love yourself in your humanness is the most sacred act of all. Let us return now to the breath. Breathing in, I hold myself in compassion. Breathing out, I let go of the need to be healed. Breathing in, I see the one who suffers. Breathing out, I say, you are safe with me. This is not a mantra. It is a returning to the place within you that knows how to care, to the part of you that does not need permission to love, to the truth that, even in the midst of pain, you are worthy of your own embrace. If you can take one moment each day to place a hand on your heart and whisper, I'm here, the journey of healing has already begun. And each time you return, even if it's the 100th time, the hurting one in you will feel a little safer, a little softer, a little more seen. You do not have to do it all at once. One breath is enough. One moment of presence, one gesture of kindness. Healing is not a destination. It is a way of walking, with tenderness, with slowness, with care. So, walk with yourself, like you would walk with a small child, barefoot on sacred ground. Speak to yourself like you would speak to someone you love, and know that in doing so, you are not weak. You are wise. You are not broken. You are blossoming. Loving the one who hurts in you is not self-indulgence. It is self-liberation. It is the path of mindfulness, the path of the bodhisattva, the path of coming home. And when you come home to yourself, truly and fully, the world begins to change, not because it has become easier, but because you are now rooted in love. 4. Transforming pain into understanding and into service. A lotus does not bloom in clear water. It blooms in the still, dark pond, nourished by the mud below. No one asks the lotus to apologize for the mud. It simply opens its petals to the sun, carrying the fragrance of its journey. You are no different. Your pain is not a stain. It is the soil in which your deepest wisdom has grown. There is a quiet revolution in the heart of Buddhist practice, a revolution that invites us not to escape suffering, but to befriend it, to look deeply into our pain not with fear, but with tenderness. And as we do, something ancient begins to stir inside us, the knowing that all wounds, when understood, become a path toward service, a path not just of personal healing, but of shared compassion. When we suffer, we often feel isolated. The mind says, I am alone in this. No one understands. No one can see me. And yet, the very nature of suffering is universal. Every being on this earth knows loss. Every human heart has a place where sorrow rests. This shared experience is not a prison. It is a bridge. When we look at our pain through the eyes of mindfulness, we begin to see that our tears are not separate from the tears of others. In every grief, there is a mirror. In every heartbreak, a thread that connects us. The Buddha taught that understanding is born from direct experience, not from theories or philosophies, but from being fully present with what is. When we sit with our own suffering, when we allow it to speak, to breathe, to unfold, we begin to understand not only ourselves, but the world. We begin to see the roots of pain, the causes of despair, the conditions that lead to anger, violence, and fear. And in that understanding, compassion naturally arises. Compassion is not something we perform. It is something we become. Like a stream flowing down a mountain, it does not choose whom to nourish. It simply flows, and it begins to flow more freely the moment we stop resisting our own pain. When we turn toward it with love, when we say, I see you, I will not abandon you, we create space for others, too, to feel seen, held, and loved. There is a story of a farmer who lost everything in a storm. His home, his fields, his family. For years, he lived in bitterness, closed to the world, angry at the gods. One day, he sat down by the river and saw a wounded bird struggling in the current. Without thinking, he stepped into the water and lifted the bird into his arms. And in that moment, the tightness in his chest softened. He wept, not because the pain had gone, but because his heart had opened. Through tending to another's suffering, he found his own healing had already begun. This is the alchemy of pain. It does not disappear. It transforms. It becomes insight. It becomes connection. And finally, it becomes service. To serve does not mean to be a martyr. It does not mean to give until we are empty. It means to offer our presence, our listening, our understanding, gifts that come not from effort, but from our being. And our being is made whole through love. There is a Vietnamese proverb: when you light a lamp for someone else, it also brightens your own path. This is true for every act of compassion. When you offer kindness to another, it is your own heart that expands. When you touch the sorrow of another with care, it is your own soul that softens. And the miracle is, no grand gesture is required. A word, a silence, a shared breath. These are the seeds of transformation. Many people ask, how do I know I have truly healed? And I often reply, when your pain no longer closes you, but opens you to others. Healing is not measured by the absence of suffering, but by the presence of love. Love that reaches out, love that stays, love that does not turn away. In the monastery, we often speak of the interbeing nature of life, that nothing exists alone, that a flower is not only a flower, but also the sunlight, the rain, the soil, the gardener, and you, too, are not just yourself. You are your ancestors. You are the struggles of generations before you. You are also the smile of a stranger, the touch of a friend, the moment of silence under a tree. Your suffering is not isolated. It carries the echoes of others, and your healing will carry others, too. When you begin to serve, not from obligation, but from the fullness of understanding, you become a continuation of the Bodhisattva path. You become Avalokiteshvara, who listens deeply to the cries of the world. You become Kuan Yin, who shows up wherever compassion is needed. You do not need a temple. You do not need a robe. You only need a heart that is willing to stay present in every hospital room, every prison cell, every classroom, every street corner. There is someone carrying pain, and if you can meet them not with pity, but with presence, you become the medicine, not the cure, but the space where healing begins. This is why we practice, not to perfect ourselves, but to become humble enough to love, strong enough to stay, soft enough to listen, awake enough to see that every being we meet is carrying an invisible story, and our task is not to solve their story, but to hold it gently, the way we learn to hold our own. Let us return now to the breath. Breathing in, I touch the pain I have known. Breathing out, I offer it as compassion to the world. Breathing in, I remember I am not alone. Breathing out, I bow to all those who have suffered like me. These are not just words. They are seeds. Each time we repeat them, we water the garden of awakening within us. Each time we offer our pain as a bridge instead of a wall, we change the world, not in some abstract way, but in the most intimate spaces of human contact. There was a time in my own journey when I believed my suffering was too heavy to carry. I tried to leave it behind. I tried to become someone else. But suffering is not a shadow you can outrun. It is a companion you must learn to walk with. And over time, I discovered that it was not my enemy. It was my teacher. It showed me where I had hardened, where I had forgotten to love, where I had forgotten to be free. Now, I bow to my suffering, not because I want more of it, but because it has brought me home. It has taught me to breathe, to listen, to be present, to serve not from pride, but from peace. You, too, have this power, the power to transform pain into presence, presence into understanding, understanding into service. It begins now, not when you are ready, not when you feel healed, but in this very breath. So let us walk gently, with open eyes and an open heart. Let us carry our pain not as a burden, but as a bowl of offering, and let that offering be love, because the world does not need perfect people. It needs people who have suffered, and who have stayed kind, people who have fallen, and who have chosen to rise, not alone, but hand in hand with others. This is how we serve. This is how we love. This is how we live the Dharma, not in theory, but in the very soil of our shared humanity. You varnished your wounds. You are the one who is learning how to love through them. Each breath you take in presence is already a step toward healing. And each time you stay, when it would be easier to run, you are planting seeds of deep understanding, not only for yourself, but for the world. May you walk gently with your pain, not to be defined by it, but to transform it into compassion, because the truth is, the one who hurts in you is not broken. They are waiting to be held. Thank you for being here with Trandy Wisdom, where every story is a path of return.